Shape.
Oh, tolerable.
Well, the town at least paid it. They
All
don't
right.
do the bridge.
Call the Wednesday, September 6, 2023 meeting of the Weathersfield Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Joe, could you please call the roll?
Sure. Rich Roberts.
Here.
Ryan Allard.
Here.
Joe Hammer here. Jim Hughes, absent. George Oikel.
Here.
Tom Deane.
Here.
Tony Homicki.
Here.
Dave Edwards.
Here.
Joe Ercolani.
Here.
Okay. We don't have we have to update our list, so I was just going there from memory. David Drake.
Here.
Peter Lambruni.
Here.
And Paul Thompson.
Here. All right, thank you. So we have 8 regular members and 3 alternates here. Let me look at the minutes and see if I can figure out whose turn it is to be seated. I guess it would be Peter's turn to be seated on the first one. On the pre-application reviews, everybody can participate. So what we have here tonight, we have a public hearing. The way these work is that the applicant comes up, makes a presentation, explains what it is they'd like to do. There's some back and forth between the applicant or their representative and the commission. Maybe some questions, maybe some comments. Following that, we open it up to members of the public who wish to comment on the application. If you want to comment on the application, I would ask that you please come up to the microphone, identify yourself by name and address for the record, and make your statements to the commission. Please don't get into a dialogue with the applicant. Once all of the members of the public who wish to speak have had an opportunity to do so, we'll call the applicant back up to respond to the public comment. And there may be some additional questions or comments from the commission. If following that, we believe we have enough information to make a decision on the application, we would vote on whether or not to close the public hearing. If we do close the hearing, we go into deliberations and then, talk about the application and probably vote on it. If following the public comment and the applicant coming back up, it turns out that there is additional information that we need or open questions that need to be answered before we can make an intelligent decision on the application, we may continue it to the next meeting. But that would be done here tonight so that you can all be aware of what's going on. With that, I'd ask the applicant or their representative to come on up, identify themselves, and tell us what it is that you're applying for.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Peter Alter. I'm a lawyer, practice law in Glastonbury at the firm of Alter and Pearson. Here tonight representing Joe Sullo, who is present as well, with a proposed text amendment with respect to adding a use to the business park zone that would permit a drive-through facility associated with a restaurant. Mr. Sullo and I appeared before this commission on July 18th of this year to present an application for a text amendment to allow a restaurant with a drive-through facility in the business park zone after some very straightforward discussion and expressions of concern, particularly regarding the protection of adjoining residential areas to various business park zone properties. The text amendment proposal failed to secure the appropriate number of votes to pass. I believe the vote was 3 in favor and 5 members opposed. After that meeting, we looked back at the comments that were made by commissioners, particularly those in opposition to the text amendment, and we took those into consideration, so that before you tonight is a very different, substantially changed text amendment proposal that seeks to address the concerns that commissioners who could not support the prior text amendment seem to consider to be most important. As part of the application, we took to heart this idea that there was a concern over particular business park zone properties that were adjacent to residential zones, and that there might be a conflict arising in that regard. So what we propose in this text amendment is to include 4 particular conditions that would be prerequisites to an application for a special permit or special exception that would be required for any restaurant with a drive-through facility in the business park zone. First of all, we propose that any property that comes before this commission for such an application must abut either a state highway or collector road within Weathersfield. By limiting this use to properties adjoining a state highway or a collector road, the business park properties that do not abut either of those more heavily traveled roadways would not be eligible for the use. There was a lot of discussion about properties, for example, on Progress Drive, and a concern expressed that those were relatively proximate to a residential development and zone, and that there needed to be some consideration given for that. Obviously, that particular roadway would not meet the criteria that we set out as a precondition. In addition to that, we felt that if a property was of a large enough size, that would offer the opportunity for greater buffering, greater landscaping, greater protection for any potential interaction with uses that are not compatible with a restaurant with a drive-through facility. And so we propose that any property be at least 4 acres in size in order to be considered for a restaurant with a drive-through. And like that provision, we also added a provision that required that it be of new construction, that this was not an opportunity to redevelop a property in a business park zone, but rather to promote new development, new commercial development within the community in accordance with the goals set out in your plan of conservation and development. And finally, we added some more extensive setbacks so that the nearest portion of any drive-through facility, including the order board, could not be less than 50 feet from a property line and not less than 75 feet from any residential zone line, so that not from the property line of a residentially zoned property, but rather so that it was set further back from any property that was residentially zoned, whether developed or not, so that there would continue to be a larger than usual buffer between those two activities. And so we increased that distance from 50 feet to 75 feet, a 50% increase in the distance to any adjoining residential zone. In addition, we propose to add another text amendment or condition to that, which is that none of those 4 prerequisites would be subject to the opportunity to seek a variance to get some relief from those, so that an applicant could not go to your zoning board of appeals first and, for example, get relief from the 4-acre requirement. And Certainly, we've seen those kinds of provisions in other zoning regulations so that uses that people perceive as potentially conflicting can't be varied to avoid those conditions that are designed to protect adjoining properties. So that those are the substantial prerequisites that any applicant would have to demonstrate compliance with in order to bring forward an application within the business park zone to create a restaurant with a drive-through facility. As you know, restaurants with drive-through facilities are permitted in the general business and regional commercial zones without those limiting additional requirements. So we think that we've heard the concerns that commissioners expressed at the July meeting, and we think that by proposing these restrictive conditions, the issues that commissioners seem concerned about, we think, have been adequately addressed in that regard. As I know you're all well aware, in order to approve a change in zoning regulations, you must be satisfied that the proposal is consistent with the goals expressed in your plan of conservation and development. I provided a reference to one of the goals set out in your POCD, which is to seek to maximize utilization of business sites and zones and promote the development and redevelopment of underutilized commercial properties. So we think that this text amendment specifically speaks to that. And it also speaks to the stated purpose of the Business Parks District in your zoning regulation, as it is intended to provide for the development, maintenance, and enhancement of areas that will allow for economic development in order to provide for employment and healthy tax base for the community. And we think that this proposal also accomplishes that without causing the jeopardy that was perceived in our earlier presentation, which we have sought to alleviate some of those concerns expressed by commissioners. There are a number of properties. I know that Denise provided you with a list of properties in the business park zone. And looking at that list, there are at least in my opinion, 5 properties that would qualify, including the provisions, the conditions that we've proposed be established as part of this regulation. Your staff also was kind enough to provide us with some of the correspondence that was received from a variety of people. As is custom with applications like this, most of them are in opposition. In fact, all of them are in opposition to this application. But I want to speak to a couple of issues that seem to pop up in a proposal like this. One is that I understand that there is a sentiment, a philosophical sentiment, that works to try to get people out of their cars and either walking to business opportunities or riding bikes to business opportunities. And I thought it was very interesting. You have, as part of the record tonight, the report from CROG that finds that they don't find that this proposal is contrary to any conditions or general regional planning issues that are presented by the text amendment. So you have their report as part of the record. But the author of that report said something that I thought was really very interesting. And I think his name is John Knowlton. In fact, I'm sure his name is John Knowlton. And what he, after reviewing the regulation, Mr. Knowlton, on behalf of the chairman and vice chairman of the Regional Planning Commission, says that CROG commends the protections the municipality has taken to ensure that the automotive-induced demand, often caused by drive-through facilities, does not impact the social health fabric of communities. And I think that's a reference to the conditions that I outlined earlier. But what struck me as sort of an interesting phrase is the phrase automotive-induced demand. All the communities, suburban communities that surround Hartford are automobile dominated. People don't walk to anywhere. They drive. And unless you live very close to the center of Old Weathersfield, you drive to do any business at all. And so the philosophy that's expressed by Mr. Carson in his correspondence to the commission is really contrary to the way we live. And I understand that people want to change the way we live, that cars are bad, that they pollute our air and cause problems for the environment. But the reality is that is the society that we have. And what we found out in the pandemic is that people use their cars to protect themselves and to conduct certain parts of their business safely. And part of that is having a drive-through facility. While I think that the philosophical approach that Mr. Carson takes is commendable, it's not the world that we live in now, and not the world that we're going to live in for a long time. Until we have public transportation and until we have a return to a different economy and a different environment, people in Weathersfield and Rocky Hill and Newington and Cromwell and Glastonbury and South Windsor all get in their cars to go do their business. And there's no way around that. We don't connect our neighborhoods, and we don't have public transportation that anybody can rely on. So I think it's unfortunate, but I don't think that that's a reason to prevent the opportunity that will serve the public by providing another opportunity to make use of a restaurant facility by way of a drive-through restaurant. I'm also very aware, after all the meetings we've been to that concern Middletown Avenue, that the Middletown Avenue residents are very unhappy with any development that occurs near them that is not residential in nature, and I appreciate their concerns. This is a business park zone. It's a business corridor that starts really at the Putnam Bridge and comes all the way up and across the Silas Deane Highway. And the business park zone is a part of that corridor. The same thing on Wells Road, where the business park zone is part of a business corridor. And so you can't, I don't think you should think of shortchanging business opportunities in those commercial zones. One of the questions that someone asked, I think at the last hearing, was how did this become a business park zone? Why is it zoned that way? And the conclusion was that it really came out of the development at the Great Meadow office building. And then that business park zone was carried because there was an office building at the corner of Spring Street and Maple Street. The New Britain Candy Company building was in the same place, and then all the way up to the Silas Deane Highway. Same on Wells Road when you look at the parts that are business park zone there, or the other places that are identified. This is an opportunity to modestly expand those activities in a business park zone in a way that is consistent with your plan of conservation and development and consistent philosophically with what the business park zone calls out in your regulation as its goals. We've tried to speak to the concerns that commissioners had by the addition of the prerequisite conditions. We're happy to speak to any of those or answer any questions that commissioners may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe?
Attorney Alter, just, you mentioned you think there's a total of 5 sites on that list of business park properties that would qualify under your proposed
I do think
standards.
so.
Could you just identify
Sure.
what those 5 are?
I have to find my list. Mr. Hamler, give me 1 sec. So this is the list that was part of the materials that
Yep.
the commission received. 100 Great Meadow Road, 1-3 Wells Road, 24 Maple Street, 885 Wells Road, 61 Arrow Road. I discounted the Balf property at the end of Jordan Lane. I don't think that that fits the prerequisites, even though it's a large undeveloped piece. And I also discounted anything owned by the town of Weathersfield or the state of Connecticut. I don't think, even though someday those properties may in fact be available to some private developer, I don't think it's fair to identify those as potentially developable.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have questions for the applicant? Tony?
Counselor, thanks for coming. You're always very thorough and very complete, and I appreciate the presentation you have. Can you tell me why 50 feet from the property line and 75 feet from residential zone line? Why 75? Where'd that number come from?
In some towns, zone lines are at property lines. In Weathersfield, zone lines are down the middle of the street. And so the residential zone line on Middletown Avenue goes right down the middle of the road. And so I was able to add a provision of another 25 feet to the restriction so that there was a greater distance than the 50 feet. When the building setback line is less, there are many things that are less, so I wanted to increase that.
Can I just ask that when you say the zone line follows the road, do you mean down the center line, or
Right
does it?
down the center line.
But at some point, as
It all
you go
turns
towards
to
Rocky Hill, it turns residential?
Correct. There, in the first piece of property on Middletown Avenue going south from Maple Street is owned by the Conservation Land Trust.
Right. on the
Although it's
other-
zoned residential, it's conserved land. And then there's a residential house next on the east side of Middletown Avenue. That's in a residential zone. And the first residential zone property on the west side would be after the property where 2 houses were raised.
So it would be the first existing house on the west side, the line is just before you get to that?
Correct.
Okay.
So it would, instead of just being bound by the setback, it would be the setback plus another 25 feet. That's the idea, is to make it a greater setback.
So how far is the west property line of 24 Maple from the residential?
The zone line is the property line running east to west from Middletown Avenue. The 24 Maple property includes 2 additional lots.
That the houses used to be on?
Correct.
And
the
then,
zone
so
line-
basically, your south property line equals the residential
Zone,
zone line?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
Were the 4 properties studied to make sure that these distances work for them all? In other
Yes.
words, were case studies done that if I was to put a restaurant of a certain size and drop my boards in, all the 4 sites that you cited work?
Yes. To I had Close Jensen and Miller help me with that, and I believe that that's a correct statement.
I'm saying that if we submit this and it doesn't work on the 4 sites. We've submitted something that is unfunctional, but
Understood.
Anybody else? If not for now.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to comment on this application? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, thank you. Judy Tacey, 212 Middletown Avenue. Lived there for 50 years, and wow. You don't think car emissions are a thing, and you're thinking about a drive-through that's going to be reliant on 99% drive-through, there's no emissions there. All I can say is wow. And let me speak for Middletown Avenue. We are well aware something's going to go in there. We're hoping that there'd be something less car-centric and something that might fit the neighborhood. Nothing has changed since the last meeting, nothing. This wasn't a good idea for all business parks, and it's not a good idea for this one either. Your predecessors had it right in their regulations for a business park. Leave it as it is for the safety of our neighborhood, pedestrians, dog walkers, bicyclists, and school buses, which have to cross right through there. I've never heard of a Starbucks drive-through that did not create an additional traffic problem. And that intersection has plenty of them now. In closing, I point out their homes directly across the street from this business park. One driveway lines up directly with the driveway on 24 Maple that is on Middletown Avenue. Anyone here want to buy that house if this goes through? What are you doing to the property value? That one and the next few. Please reject the text amendment proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to comment on this application? Yes, sir. On the end.
Thank you. My name is Bob Woodward. I live at 456 Middletown Avenue in Weathersfield, and we've lived there for 45 years or 46 years, whatever it is now. I've got cancer, and I go every day beginning last month up to St. Francis for radiation, and most of those days I travel along Middletown Avenue and Spring Street. And I've begun to look at those streets, especially Spring Street, which I didn't always travel, and look at it from the point of view of what if this passes and we get a drive-through at the north end of Spring Street. I doubt if the state building's going to start giving out things with a drive-through, but someday it could be available. Or at 24 Maple Street. And I see two streets that are very similar. Walkers of all kinds with dogs, carriages, school buses, geese on Spring Street in abundance. People parking cars because they're visiting, they're getting maintenance done, they're moving, the postal truck going along. It makes the street, both of those streets, a little tighter. If you're going to start putting out somewhere traffic in and out of a drive-through. School buses are in abundance in the morning, which I know from the drive-through over on Silas, Deane, where Starbucks is right now. That's packed in the morning from what I see of it once in a while. I mean, how much traffic can we put on Middletown Avenue and Spring Street with school buses? People walk without walking on the sidewalks on those streets. There's sidewalks on one side on Spring Street. Most of Middletown Avenue is one side. I saw someone, I was out in my yard doing some work, and somebody walked by Could have gotten on the sidewalk in front of my house, but stayed out on the street. People do that. They ride their bikes, they ride their motor scooters. There is a cross-country team that goes through one day a week anyway in the cross. It might be from Rocky Hill, I'm not sure. We've got a lot of pedestrian traffic out there. How much could we say the same about the other streets that abut the business parks in town? I think a couple of you in July said it very well, that your concern was for a residential neighborhood, pedestrians, people walking, people out there, and you voted it down, and I deeply appreciated that. I also have a couple of other concerns with this. There was mention of underutilized business property. What exactly defines an underutilized business property? You're going to have to define that because you are the people on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And 4 acres, I understand, but is that 4 acres empty, or 4 acres partly full, or 4 acres where a building's going to come down, or part of a building is going to come down? Progress Drive has plenty of empty space up there. But there's a building out on Wells that has a for sale sign on it, or a for rent sign, or a for lease sign. They're all over Weathersfield. And it looks like it's got to be 4 acres, but I'd say some of that building would have to come down to put a drive-through in there. These things need defining, at least from where I sit. I thank you for listening. I encourage you to please vote this down. You spoke well last time and voted it down. And as a longtime resident of Weathersfield, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Brian Malicki, 222 Middletown Avenue. So first, I'd like to point out that the representative made a comment that we don't want anything at the end of the street. That is partially true. We would prefer to keep it the way it is, but we're not opposed to having the right business put there. We just don't think a business with a drive-through window or a restaurant with a bar serving alcohol is going to, which were so far the 2 proposals they've come up with, is going to be fitting for our neighborhood. A lot of traffic, as everybody's already spoken to. I'm not going to rehash all the other comments everybody made, but what I will say is that when they rezoned this to a business park, I don't recall what it was prior to that. I know it was discussed in the previous meeting, but this property, as well as others, were made into a business park. There's a reason why that was done. You could have just done a blanket commercial, and that would have taken care of everything, but you didn't. It was made into a business park for a reason, and limiting the drive-throughs for a reason. At the end of Spring Street, there's the quarry there. I believe that, as well as several parcels around there, are also labeled as a business park. How would we like to see McDonald's, when and if the use for that quarry is done, how would we like to see McDonald's pop up there right going into Old Weathersfield? There's a reason why this was done this way. Keep it the way it is. We don't need another drive-through on Middletown Avenue. It's not going to work. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ronald Tacey. I live at 212 Middletown Avenue. I'm opposed to the text amendment proposal for a restaurant with a drive-through or drive-up window in a business park zone and any other business park zone that would qualify based on the amendment changes. The last zoning meeting in July, a proposal to change the text of allowed uses in a business park zone in the town of Weathersfield was heard. This application was rejected overwhelmingly by this commission, and rightly so. In tonight's presentation, the applicant only addressed the concerns of the commissioners. There was no mention of the concerns of the neighbors, except that we oppose all non-residential development. which is not true. I appreciate that this commission is very concerned about Weathersfield having a positive image with business and the need to generate tax revenue for the town. As a resident of Middletown Avenue and a taxpayer in town for over 50 years, I recognize the need to add to our tax base. We live in a town that wants to spend more money than our tax revenue can support. Up until recently, the property at 24 Maple Street has been a good neighbor for Middletown Avenue. Unfortunately, with a change of ownership came the purchase of 2 adjoining residential properties, subsequent demolition, a change in zone from residential to business park, a proposal that was approved to build a restaurant there despite overwhelming neighborhood opposition didn't happen. Now the property is described as underutilized. Up until the ownership changed, this property, in my opinion, was utilized properly and was a good neighbor. The several distribution businesses that have been there, and including the current one, have had light traffic. They operate during normal business hours. However, the demolition of the 2 residences and the removal of all the mature landscaping which shielded the parking lot, the dumpsters, the loading docks, and everything, has created an eyesore for the neighborhood. The only underutilization here is that maybe the current distribution business at this site may not need a facility this large. Perhaps a better use would be subdivide the warehouse, find another tenant. If there's any underutilization concept here, it's just been a creation of the owner. The text change to allow a restaurant with a drive-through or drive-up window depends on a high volume of traffic to be profitable. We already have far too much traffic than the current infrastructure of the intersection of Middletown Avenue and Route 3 up to the Silas Deane Highway can handle. We don't have to do much research to quantify how dangerous this part of Weathersfield is. The state of Connecticut has a crash database which collects all crash reports from the police on a rolling past 3 years. It can be sorted by town, and I've done this online, right down to the street level. Each crash is given a red dot on the map. The area of Route 3 between Middletown Avenue and the Silas Deane Highway is covered with red dots, by far most in town. Years ago, we allowed the Valero chain to replace a 1950s era filling station on the corner of Route 3 and the Silas Deane. Yeah, I'll admit I'm old enough to remember that gas station. That service station had a couple of pumps and did some oil changes. The Valero facility can handle 8 cars at a time to buy fuel, plus it's a very active convenience store. If we had to do over, I believe the potential congestion at an intersection as busy as this one would have been given different consideration. We have a traffic bottleneck here at an intersection that was simply not designed for this volume of traffic. We also had a dangerous situation where Spring Street intersected with Route 3 with no traffic light. And close by, there was Middletown Avenue, which had a traffic light. So we went through a realignment of the streets to try to solve the problem. Despite those changes to the intersection, it is still very congested with turn signals that are confusing and often ignored by the motorists. To make this a traffic trifecta, the railroad came back into use, and while the train goes by at an irregular schedule, when it does come by, we have another congestion and safety issue. 24 Maple Street is simply a bad location for a business as intense as this. As pointed out by this commission at the last meeting, we have numerous locations suitable for a restaurant with a drive-through on the Silas Deane Highway, the Berlin Turnpike. A change in use for this location for a business that is totally dependent on automobile traffic will add to what is already the most dangerous section of road in Weathersfield. For the safety and welfare of our community, we can't add this type of business. We don't need to speculate about if this business with a drive-through would create a traffic problem. We already have a traffic problem. Adding hundreds of cars making turns at a busy intersection is a recipe for disaster. The original intent of the business park zone designation was not to have high-volume, consumer-type traffic. Please do not change anything on the list of allowed uses for a business park zone. You got it right. Save us from all further headaches. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The woman in blue had her hand up before, if you want to go now. Okay.
Good evening, Christine Brown, 188 Middletown Avenue. I oppose the text amendment proposal for change for all the same reasons that my fellow neighbors have mentioned. You know, when I went to buy this house 24 years ago, I looked for Weathersfield. I always loved Weathersfield since I was a little kid. And I chose this neighborhood because it was so close to old Weathersfield, but I couldn't afford to be in, you know, right by the green, but this was close enough, and it's a beautiful neighborhood. I think having, you know, a business that allows a drive-through would just create more problems, safety problems for neighbors and anyone else that goes through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Christine Giacomi, 417 Middletown Avenue. As a lifelong resident of Weathersfield and Middletown Avenue, I care about Weathersfield, and I speak up if I feel that something will have an adverse effect on our town. It's my understanding that we are here today because Weathersfield does not permit drive-through businesses in its business park areas. Business parks are small clusters of businesses that are often in areas that are adjacent to residential neighborhoods. The applicant is seeking approval for a drive-through Starbucks at 24 Maple Street. In our town, there are already two appropriately suited roads for drive-through businesses, that being Silas Deane Highway and Berlin Turnpike. These are streets lined with businesses where there are traffic lights, designated turn lanes, and limited pedestrian traffic. The property at the intersection of Maple Street and Middletown Avenue is in no way a suitable location for a drive-through business. While drive-throughs are convenient for customers, there are significant downsides to the surrounding properties. Drive-throughs generate more traffic, and with that, safety concerns both for drivers and pedestrians. Drive-throughs add more noise to the area, as from voices heard between the customer and the staff via the order speaker system, as well as noise from idling cars and revving engines. Litter increases to the area, and overall residents may feel less safe in their homes with an increased flow of non-local people driving through their neighborhood. Certainly it goes without saying that no one would want an increase in traffic, noise, litter, or safety concerns near their homes. The Planning and Zoning Committee needs to consider the effects this proposal will have on the future of our town. It is my hope that as members of this committee, you act as advocates for the town's residents. In making your decision, consider whether allowing a drive-through will please the residents or whether such a change would perhaps ultimately lead to the downfall of the neighborhood and in time perhaps even our town. This particular intersection is a gateway to Weathersfield from those entering town from the east. The area is already very congested with traffic. Adding a drive-through business to the area would compound the already bad traffic situation. It would not please the residents to have an increase in traffic, noise, litter, and safety concerns. I am very much opposed to the applicant's proposal and ask that you please deny his request. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Larry Brown. I live at 188 Middletown Avenue, and I oppose this application for text amendment change. Understand that the text amendment, he's asking you to change your law to specifically suit his enterprise, and citing these other locations, business park as well. Once the genie's out of the bottle, you can't do anything about it. When he suggests 4 acres, a business park location may just decide that they have enough money and can absorb a couple of residences, which happened in this case. I don't know what their acreage is at 24 Maple Avenue, but that's a consideration. Once those rules are set down, they can be manipulated to suit specific needs. It's no secret we have a traffic issue on Middletown Avenue. You may not know, realize, or remember that that's a no truck zone, and that law is in there for a specific reason. It's not a big road. There's not a lot of room on the shoulders for the bicyclists, as my neighbors have already mentioned. Try driving the speed limit on that road, and you'll have people pass you on the double yellow line, I swear to God. And that's normal course of business for where we live right now. The Tacy's had the tree in front of their house smashed into. The house across the street had a car smash into that. Back in June, I was mowing my lawn at 1:30 in the afternoon, and I witnessed an accident. 2 doors up, parked car on the street, car plowed right into the back of it. The guy was drunk, and he evaded. The cops caught him and arrested him. But these are the everyday things we have to deal with now. If you allow this text amendment change, and you allow a drive-through, if you build it, they will come. Corny, yes, but it's true. And when you speak to conservation and planning, that speaks to balance. We're not naive. We understand a business is going to go there. That's okay. We understand that. But a drive-through will really, really make the quality of life on Middletown Avenue and potentially other business park areas that much more worse. You know, you're our advocates. We trust and we look up to you to, protect our interests. But it's about balance. And when they're asking you to change your law, which is in there for a very good reason, just so they can make good on their business enterprise, that's something to think about. So I thank you very, very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to comment on this application? While you're thinking about that, I'll note the correspondence that we received for the record. It was a letter dated September 5th from Kevin Sullivan of Bike Walk Weathersfield, essentially reiterating the comments that he had submitted on July 18th. Correspondence from Tom Carson, 12 Avalon Place, resubmitting his correspondence about the drive-through culture and indicating that he saw this type of application as spot zoning that undermined the concept of zoning in town. There was some additional correspondence, one from the woman who just spoke recently, another from Betty Ann Vose Fusco, 181 Dix Road, concerned about the amount of traffic at particular intersections. Kelly Dela Cruz, 179 Middletown Avenue, talking about Maple Street and the property and the trees being removed and the noise and other negative changes that have been made to the neighborhood recently. With that, does anybody else wish to comment on this application? Anybody else? All right, if not, I'll invite the applicant to come back up and either respond or elucidate us further here.
All the lawyers of the big words.
Illuminate us.
Pretty high bar.
I've been on the commission for 48 years, but I would like somebody, town manager or you, to tell us where all the parks are in town.
The business park properties?
Business parks, yeah.
Sure.
I thought I might know where some of them are, but I don't know where
The
they are.
materials were put on
Oh, there
the
is a
table in
list.
front of
Okay, I
us.
didn't see
Yeah, I
it.
asked to have it
Sorry,
Ask and you shall
distributed just
receive.
so that we wouldn't have to
I got it
speculate.
here. I didn't remember.
organization for here.
I apologize.
We'll get a bigger one for you.
awful or you're
I have
bad?
to admit, Mr. Royal, I had a little trouble with that map, but there is, in addition to the map, there is a list of business park properties that was prepared by the town staff that lists, I think, at least as near as I could tell, all of the business park zoned properties in Weathersfield. I think there's about 27 or 28 of them, if I counted correctly. As I indicated in my first presentation, I did go through that list pretty carefully and identified what I think are at least 5 of those properties that would lend themselves to this text amendment. A number of them are owned by the town of Weathersfield, some are owned by the state of Connecticut, others are associated with the Buckeye terminal and the jet line, fuel line that runs up from New Haven, and those are really not sites that would ever, at least in my
Those are
opinion, be
considered
available.
business parks?
Those are all zoned
Fuel
business
tanks,
park
right?
zone, yeah.
On 91?
Yeah.
He's saying he's not considering it.
But
You're
I-
not considering them.
I did, they're zoned business park zone, but I don't think they,
Not open to anybody but the owner.
I don't think that they would ever lend themselves to a typical business park zone development.
How do you know that? Mr.
Well,
Chairman?
let me give you an example, because there is one that I'm pretty familiar with. The 99 acres that Balf owns at the end of Jordan Lane, that is really associated with its Newington quarry, but is in the town of Weathersfield.
Yeah.
That parcel is business park zoned, but it would not qualify, in my opinion, it doesn't meet the 4 prerequisites that we've set out. Part of it is on Russell Road, and I guess you could argue that that's a collector road in some ways. But I don't, back there, I've been back there, I represented the Balf Company for a long time.
It sounds like you are right there. Go
And
ahead. I'm
my
sorry.
point is that even though that's listed as a business park zone property, that is not a property that would lend itself to restaurant use for the drive-through facility. It doesn't meet the prerequisite, in my mind, of being on either a state highway or collector road. So when I went through the list of properties, I eliminated those that are owned by the state or the town of Weathersfield. I eliminated those that are basically used for utilities, such as the Buckeye Terminal and the jet line. And I also obviously eliminated all those that are less than 4 acres. And that left me with what I think is a fairly probable list of 5 properties that would lend themselves to this kind of development. That's how I arrived at that.
The only reason I would disagree with you partly, and I don't like to disagree with you because you're very sharp in these matters, but, you know, along 91 there, that tank farm might be there now and might not be 10 years from now. And this commission has to think 10 years from now. Or 20.
Could be a truck stop by that point. No, I don't disagree with that, but at this moment in time, when I look at that list, that's really not,
Trying to be
Eligible.
practical, yeah,
I am.
okay.
The,
I just wanted to point that out.
No, I appreciate it. I did want to make one comment, Mr. Chairman, which is that we're proposing a text amendment. If, and only if, the text amendment is adopted, at some point after we go through other boards and commissions, we would be back to this commission with an application for special permit that would require us to meet all of the criteria you have in your zoning regulations for a special permit. A lot of what the neighbors spoke to today speak to that, and not to a text amendment. Can we satisfy you that we're not creating a traffic condition? I didn't tell you anything about any particular site. That's not what a text amendment is designed to do. If we come back with an application on a particular site that's in a business park zone and we can satisfy the 4 conditions that we've outlined, then it'd be our burden to prove that we're not creating a traffic problem, that we're not diminishing the value of properties that are near us, that that the public safety is not endangered as a result of that activity. But those are not text amendment considerations. Those are specific application, special permit considerations. There's a difference.
And in those occasions, the public will be,
As
they'll be
absolutely,
around the
those are all,
corner.
that's all by public hearing, and everyone has the opportunity to present whatever information they choose to.
Yeah, I tried to accentuate that point at the last hearing when we were looking at a list of 25 possible properties that it could apply to. And, you know, I think while the public comments may have been limited, the deliberations of the commission should be on the issue as a text change, particularly in light of, you know, the 5 likely parcels that you've identified as, you know, possibly qualifying under the 4 criteria that you've set, rather than just focusing on one location.
I think that's the methodology of text amendments.
Yeah.
Can I,
But I appreciate you doing the work for us in terms of, you know, narrowing it down. That was actually going to be one of my questions, but you kind of preempted it. Ryan?
just a quick question. When you have an application that you're presenting and it's got a drive-through or it doesn't, does that trigger any further traffic design or traffic analysis? I realize you have to do that regardless, but does a drive-through put you at a different sort of category, like where the traffic design has to be a bit more aggressive in terms of the models that they create and the impacts that it would have? Like, just curious if you've done previous applications for like this.
I have, and
I know you have, sorry. Silly way to phrase that.
Our traffic consultants, who are all licensed professionals, use the standard traffic consultants manuals, the ITE handbooks, and there is a significant difference between a sit-down restaurant. They're all categories of restaurants: a sit-down restaurant, a fast food restaurant with a drive-through, and they drive different analysis by that professional. So the answer to your question, the long answer to a short question, is yes, it does make a difference, and the analysis is done based on the use, the specific use.
And if you're adding a business like that, and let's say the intersection, the signalized intersection very close nearby is already an F or a D or something low that you wouldn't want, you letter grade intersections based on their performance. And if it's already at a certain level, do you only have to prove that you're not making it worse, or is the onus on you to attempt any kind of, like, are you working with the state to redo some timings, maybe some phasing for pedestrians more? Like, just curious how that process works.
So in other applications that I've been involved in, our traffic consultant will make recommendations. For example, oftentimes there's a road widening, so there's a bypass lane. Oftentimes the phasing of lights can be recalibrated to make intersections function better. In addition to that, there can be limitations: right turn in, right turn out only, because any one of the 5 properties that I identified, I think, is going to implicate OSTA because of its association either being on a state highway or associated with a highway intersection. So the state would have another look at any traffic implications that would involve an intersection. The Wells Road intersection, Silas Highway is a state highway. Maple Street, that's a state highway. So I think the answer is that that analysis would not only be looked at by your traffic authority and your town engineer, but also by the state.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
David?
I'll be honest with you, the thing that kind of makes me a little uncomfortable, we've had something that's worked here for a long time, and you've picked out 4 acres. So why don't we make it 5 acres? And you picked out 75 feet. Why shouldn't that be 100 feet? I guess I'm trying to, this thing is, and again, I'm not against your business, but it seems like this is all about you and your business, which is fine, but that's all we're here for. So, make it 10 acres and 200 feet away, and we'll pass it for everybody. And I'm just saying, that's all we'll do, is it's a special case for you. So we should all decide, do we want a Starbucks there with a drive-through, or we don't? And I'll be honest with you, it was a residential neighborhood with those quiet businesses, and I'm just not seeing why we make a change after all these years of something that's worked good. So, make it 5 acres or make it 100 feet, and just to see how it goes. But I'm going to vote no matter what, but I just, and I understand you guys have a business you want to do something with, but this is all really just about you, and it's fine, but I don't think that's the right way.
With all due respect, Mr. Drake, that's what I do.
I know, I
represent.
I'm
not going to apologize for it.
Last time we voted no, so you kind of changed it so you could slip in. Again, the residents were, the business was there, the old business that the residents moved in with rules, and now they're there, and we're kind of changing the rules. And does Weathersfield get a lot of benefit from this? Was all done? I guess maybe get a little more taxes. I'm just trying to. Again, I don't want to destroy your neighborhood for a couple of rules in one place.
So with all due respect, what you're doing is you're falling into the same trap that the residents did, is you're speaking to a specific example. And I understand that.
Well, you kind of are too, though.
Well, I'm really trying not to.
Yeah, I know. I understand.
And
I'm just trying to think of why we want to do this. But okay, I'm done.
But the point is that a zoning regulation is not a static document that changes over time. It changes by demand. I can remember, maybe some other people who do land use can remember, when it was hard to convince somebody that a pharmacy needed a drive-through. And that there was a good reason for it, why banks needed drive-throughs. A lot of towns adopted drive-throughs just for banks. Then they expanded it to banks and pharmacies. Then they expanded it to other kinds of uses. Things change. The needs of a community change. And a zoning regulation is supposed to be a living document. It's not set in stone, and there's never to be any change. Now, you may not agree with the change, and I respect that. But I don't think that you can always fall back on, gee, it worked in 1980, why would we change it?
Peter?
So, Counselor, since Dave opened the door here somewhat, I don't understand the arbitrary 4 conditions you put on there. To me, it sounds like they're very specific to what your needs are. And I'll just leave it at that. That's just my personal opinion. But I do have one major concern that was not addressed by any of your 4 conditions, and that's safety. I do not agree that this will not be an unsafe condition. I live not far from that intersection. I'm an avid cyclist, and at least 2 or 3 times a week I cross that road with my bicycle. I've had some close calls. I also stopped using that intersection going home because I don't like sitting at that light, because I've had some close calls. People almost rear-ending me when I'm sitting at that light. Regardless of making it specific to this, if you had come in here and these applicants were not here, and you had said to me, okay, I'd like to make a general text change amendment to 4 or 5 locations in town, my mind would immediately go to this intersection, because that's where I live. And that's where I think there's a problem. So you haven't convinced me that issue's been solved with those 4 conditions. It's just not something I'm comfortable with. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, and what I would say is those 4 conditions were not designed to speak to an issue that would come up when a specific site came before you. And Mr. Lambruni, if we come before you with an application that involves Middletown Avenue and you're not satisfied that we've addressed safety issues, then you deny the special permit. That's the function of a special permit.
But then you can come back and challenge us, and then we have to go to some court. I mean, it creates a condition that I think is unsafe, period. I don't even want to step my toe in that problem. Joe?
Yeah, I guess, Attorney Alter, I don't really view your current proposal as materially different from the one we denied in July. I appreciate the attempt on the conditions, but I think we had a very thorough discussion about a lot of things, including the proximity of this zone in many places to residential. I think when you look at the ITE manual that you cited, I've dealt with it as well, and I don't remember, probably a little bit off, but my recollection is if you're looking at a fast food or coffee shop type drive-through, I think the peak hour traffic generation is like 10 times or 9 or 10 times what other non-drive-through uses. I think it's a very great order of magnitude. So I'm still not comfortable introducing that. I think there's, miles of Silas, Deane, and Berlin Turnpike that are available and that allow the use. I guess on the 75 foot and the 50 feet, 75 feet is essentially 5 car lengths. So if you've got a property line that's the same as the residential zone line, you could have a house 5 or 6 cars away to hear the speaker, the idling motors, people talking on their cell phones, people playing the radios. That's incredibly close to residential. I think on the, you cite some of the plan of development and underutilized sites and so forth, and generally speaking, I mean, if I think of what we're talking about as a typical coffee shop or fast food restaurant on any of these sites in the business park, typically I think you're talking 3,500, 5,000 square foot building with a lot of the activity at the drive-through. Realistically speaking, I don't think that size building is going to add a very substantial amount to the town's tax base, or they're not going to be employing 100 people as other type, like the businesses that are allowed in the business park zone might do. And I really think we have to balance that against all the potential impacts to the town as a whole, and to the immediate neighborhood on any of these 5 sites which you've identified. So I'm just not comfortable with it, or, as a bunch of speakers have said, commission members and some of the audience people, I just don't think the purpose of the business park was to get us into the drive-through type of operation that we've previously deemed appropriate on the Silas Deane Highway or the Berlin Turnpike. And I'll repeat what Commissioner Lambruni said and what I said last time, is I appreciate a special permit requires a public hearing and we apply all the standards, but I'm not hearing anything that convinces me that this application meets the standards or requirements for a zone change. And I think last time in the applicant's presentation, you cited that courts have upheld zone changes if they're deemed to be in the overall public interest of the town. And here, all things considered, my conclusion is it's not in the overall public interest of the town. And for this handful of properties, I'm just not seeing any great benefit to the town, and we're not seeing people knocking down our door from properties in the business park zone to do this. So I remain where I was last time on this.
Well, let's let him
okay.
finish his presentation before we get into deliberations.
I'm fine.
For that. Okay.
I just want to ask the town if in a business park zone, are we finding applications that would like to have a drive-through, and since we don't have that and it's not possible in some properties, wink wink, like, is that preventing any applications or any interest in in the town's opinion?
I'm not aware of any requests that we've had in a business park zone at this time. It may be because it's not allowed, that they're not requesting it. So I can't tell you whether or not that would be something that would drive it or not, but in my short time here, I'm not aware of any that have come forward with that request.
Thanks.
I have nothing to add, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any additional questions for the applicant? All right. Someone make a motion to close the hearing?
Move to close.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor of closing the hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll, for
Okay,
discussion, make a motion.
Yeah, I mean, and just for clarity, Paul and Joe are not voting on this particular application. Okay.
Sure, so I'll move to approve to be able to get us into a discussion.
All right, making a motion to approve?
Yes.
All right. Is there a second? Well, I'll second it for discussion.
So I guess, again, no surprise based on my earlier comments or last time, I will be voting against the motion. And again, I appreciate the applicant, I think, has, put together what they can in support of this, but I just don't see it meeting the test for a zone change, and I think I don't think it meets the test, and I think we would be opening the door to issues, impacts, at all 5 of these sites that could potentially come into play. And I think there are some, each one of the 5, I think you could find some individual reasons, whether it's Putnam Park office building, right along the Connecticut River in that setting. I guess I'm not seeing that as a prime or appropriate site for a drive-through restaurant. Progress Drive, you've got a school in there. I mean, I think you've got residential abutting at many of these sites. I'm just not seeing it as appropriate, and I think it comes down to the traffic impacts are very, very big issue with me. And I think the other attributes and impacts that come from a drive-through, what I mentioned before, the noise, the fumes, the cars, and so forth.
Okay. Anthony?
I came in tonight, I think, open-minded, just seeing what the text amendment might impact other properties, and you referenced the 100 Great Meadow Road. I mean, that would have been an example if Attorney Alter came in and said, this is it. And there's five or six other properties here that might come into play, but let's focus on the Great Meadow Road property and see if we could do that. We might be able to do a whole different argument. I came in tonight thinking the property's maybe paying $8,000 a year for this vacant parcel, vacant land. We could bring in $50,000 a year in property taxes with personal property and real estate coming through. But this is the gateway to Weathersfield. The only other thing that we think we've seen emptied out is Denny's, and I don't think that would fit, any type of a drive-through, never mind the business zone. If I remember right, I think it was Commissioner Hughes who talked about years ago having 100 trucks coming and going 24/7 on this site with large lights, and does the business zone allow that to come through? I would hope the property owner looks at the highest and best use for this parcel. I'm sure due diligence has already been given. That's why we're here tonight. But, I'm not going to vote in favor of the motion. I think it is the gateway of the community, and even with a high-end type of restaurant that would allow a drive-through, something that's aesthetically appealing and beautiful landscaping, I just don't think it's the proper use focusing on this, separate from the definition of what we're doing on the text amendment. It has become personal, and reason being that I'll be voting no.
All right. Yeah, I mean, just a reminder that it is a text amendment, and we've identified tentatively at least 5 parcels that this applies to, so just kind of remind everybody to look at it somewhat more globally. Yeah, Peter?
So one thing we've touched on is the disruption and the noise potential that this could cause to a neighborhood. I also have a personal experience on that I want to share with this commission, not in Wethersfield. I have a small cottage in another part of Connecticut that almost is the same situation as this. It's in a residential area, and there's Route 1 there, that's a commercial zone. And I am at least 300 or 400 feet away from the drive-through. And I think they're right next door to me. I mean, the sound carries. When people talk through those boxes, and if the wind is right, cars that don't have great mufflers, I hear them roaring. So I think that it would be a great imposition in any of these locations to have a drive-through because of noise, pollution, as I personally experienced myself.
I'm going to talk in favor of this. This commission has held a hearing on any such site or use in a business park. And I don't think every business park or location makes sense. And I don't think we should preclude this type of use in a business park, because those business parks do have cars coming to the other businesses in those parks, and those people might like to go into the restaurant or the coffee shop in a retail location in that park. So that's why I would be in favor of it, and I think this is not saying that they're going to locate anywhere and everywhere in a business park in the town, because this commission doesn't have to approve anything, including on Middletown Ave. So just because we say it can be done in the various business parks doesn't mean we have to approve any of them. But that we might want to in certain ones. I can see one or two that, the one down, on off of Wells Road, probably up in there, it makes some sense. There's a school up in there, and a restaurant drive-through makes sense to me up in there if somebody proposed it. But that's just an example in my mind, but I haven't analyzed all of it, and I don't see why we should vote this down. I don't think it makes sense in this day and age. We are an automotive society. We probably will be in the future, and I think people deserve to have this kind of available business, and so I'll be voting for it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Tom.
I've listened very carefully to the applicant's presentation and remarks, the debate amongst the commission members and comments among commission members regarding this this proposed change in the regulations. I came in somewhat optimistic that this proposal might have overcome the concerns that the commission had at the July meeting when this text was originally proposed for change. However, I don't think I can really alter my opinion at this time. I don't think that from a philosophical nature that the detrimental environmental and safety issues that are presented by drive-throughs in any zone, but in particular for business zone, a business park zone, which I don't see that being envisioned as a place where there's a huge amount of automobile traffic, and the impact of automobile traffic to pedestrian traffic is inherently a safety issue. that would be posed in, I think, practically any of the business park zones in the town. So I appreciate Mr. Alter's presentation. I think he's done an excellent job. He certainly deserves the region-wide reputation that he has for the excellence of his presentations and proposals. But I just don't think that this proposed text really overcomes the detrimental impact of this kind of use of property that we've set aside as being not applicable in a business park zone. And I regret that. I hate to turn down any property owner's desire to utilize his or her property, to make a gainful income. That's the kind of society that we have. It is capitalism, but we do have regulations for purpose to limit the negative impact of raw business purposes, and I just don't think that our concerns from July are really overcome by the current presentation, and that's sort of the bottom line. Thank you.
Thanks. George?
Additionally, I'd like to ask, and the town manager might be able to help with this. Newington no longer permits drive-throughs on going in on in their town. Is that correct? Particularly, I'm thinking of the Berlin Turnpike.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not familiar
Okay,
enough with
I think
Newington's-
that is the case. I'm wondering why, because they have quite a few of them out there.
They do have quite a
But I
few,
think they stopped allowing them a couple of years ago, I think, but I may be wrong. Rich, you know anything about that?
No, I have
And I'm
no
wondering
knowledge
why.
of this whatsoever.
Is there just an anti car in use in any businesses?
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone here knows that.
Okay, sorry.
Might be a
Thank you.
moratorium or something, but I didn't.
We invited the drive-through, we invented it.
Yeah, I have opinions, but I can also count.
Yeah, I know.
Does anybody else have anything they want to say before we vote on this?
I'll just say in general, like, for a text amendment, anything that comes before us, I feel like there's a lot of debate and there's a lot of fear over, like, what could come, and, maybe if we deny it, and then it would be like a legal battle, but there's going to be, like, a context-sensitive solution at any of the 5 sites, if any of the 5 sites end up getting a proposal. And there are some sites that, in my opinion, are already of a situation where it's like you might want to consider a different development as opposed to some of the other 4. I just think I think the safety is a priority in a lot of the sites, especially in the sites that are less developed, because those become destinations and you're driving traffic towards them as opposed to some other areas where traffic already exists in abundance. So, I think, I don't know, I guess, like, maybe if there was an amendment to this that knocked some of them off the list and there were others that we were comfortable with, my fear is that we're preventing development in another area by hyper-fixating on one. There is a huge onus on the presenters to say that this is safer than it was. Like, because you need to do the traffic design, you need to do the models, the synchro, the whatever you're doing, whatever you're using. And I think even if we pass this, there is like a gigantic hurdle to cover at any of the sites, not just one. Like, we may be fixating on like some sites that we have personal involvement in, but we're kind of preventing some development in others where I think we could be getting some benefits. So, I don't know. I feel like we're worried about something when we're not the ones that have to do all of the work to prove that a design is appropriate for a certain location. And I think, I don't know, like everything needs to be context sensitive. And then if you're going in front of OSTA, especially on a state road, that's a giant hurdle to pass too. I know the comments that you get from them, unfortunately. So anyway, just throwing that out there as an opinion in general, like I guess I'm not as afraid of seeing some developments and getting them and then maybe amending them and getting something a little bit more sensitive to the community around it. Anyway.
I agree with Ryan. Again, I go back to the highest and best use, separate from the text amendment. We're here only for the text amendment, nothing else. But the highest and best use, there's a lot of communities in Greater Hartford, never mind statewide or the East Coast, that have business parks that are 40% empty. The day the hybrid is here, the vacancy issues are going to stay. And we're lucky that we have at least a developer here that is creative enough and risks the fact that he's looking at other options to focus on highest and best use for this site. So hopefully he'll be back with a better, more entertaining use in the near future.
I guess now that everyone else has belabored it, I'll say a couple of the things that kind of, I'm coming at it, I think, from a different perspective than what others have expressed. First, I was more comfortable with the prior application than I am with this one, just because it is so tailored to alleviate concerns that were raised last time, that it, by definition, creates the possibility that it could only apply to 5 or 6 places. By the same token, I think there may be value in reuse of existing buildings rather than mandating new construction. There may be a perfectly good 3-acre parcel somewhere in town. The other thing, and this is more, I think, for us to just kind of file away for when we do the POCD. I think there is some kind of assumption of tremendous wisdom on the part of those who came before us in putting these properties in the business park zone, when I think all it really was commercial properties that weren't on the Silas, Deane, or the Berlin Turnpike. We have to call it something. And we kind of tailor it to what was already there, not, recognizing that many of these were in or near residential properties and probably shouldn't be allowed to, expand wantonly. But I don't think there was any kind of conscious decision that we were going to create this business park zone as a way to encourage additional or new commercial development in those areas. It was more kind of a temporary parking space for commercial uses that were not in the places where we necessarily wanted to encourage commercial uses. But that's frankly neither here nor there. But I think, people talking about business parks, and you think about, Glastonbury Boulevard and all the buildings and so forth. I mean, that's not what our business park zone is. Progress Drive was kind of an intention to be an industrial park that sort of, 40 years later has never gotten off the ground. Most of the rest of these properties are just commercial ones that are, outliers of one type or another. So.
Rich, are you suggesting we turn this down because it isn't broad enough and doesn't include existing,
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that, I was more comfortable with the last one because at least we could see what all the range of possibilities were,
Yeah.
and that we weren't sort of artificially winnowing things out.
It's just new stuff, and
Yeah.
So that's what I was asking too.
All right, anything else, Tom?
Mr. Chairman, it sounds to me like a degree of the thrust of what you've just indicated is a realization that perhaps some of the properties that are currently zoned business park, that we should re-examine those locales to entertain the possibility of rezoning certain areas or parcels that are in the, current business park zone. Is that correct?
I don't know that it's necessarily that we should look at rezoning them, but I think we shouldn't be under any misapprehension that there was, tremendous planning that went into, creating them and designating them as such. It was more like, what else are we going to call these?
Right. I think you're right.
Peter, I just Tom, to just piggyback on your point, I mentioned last time that we're going to do a plan of development, and those are all great questions that ought to be considered in the new plan of development. So that was one of the other reasons why I just thought we're just trying to rush this. Why not just see what the overall town should look like, what people want to see, and is this an appropriate use, or should we expand this appropriate use? That's where I think the decision should be made, not here tonight. It just doesn't make sense to me.
All right, anybody else? If not, the motion is to approve the text change. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Nay.
No.
Okay,
Sorry, I'm an aye.
all right.
I spaced out.
3 in favor, 6 against, motion fails. All right, next item, 4.1, pre-application review, AM Group, Edward Alnas, 718 Silas, Deane apartment building.
Good evening. My name is Marcus Puddock. I'm a professional engineer and land surveyor with an office at 26 Broadway in North Haven. I'm here representing the landowners. We were in not too long ago for the gas station that's at the corner of Silas, Deane and Wells Road. This primarily has to do with the adjacent parcel, which is was a restaurant, and we're here to discuss redeveloping that parcel to a mixed residential use, a 4-story mixed residential use building with a small commercial piece in the main floor and residential above.
Just to be clear, you're talking about the Weathersfield Diner?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because the plans that we got were illegible.
Okay, I apologize for that. Additionally, as part of this redevelopment of this area, we would like to modify the rear portion of the gas station's parking lot to include a drive aisle, waiting aisle for and modify the oil change to a car wash. We feel that a car wash is a cleaner, more environmentally friendly use than the existing drive-through oil change is. Although a car wash does require a number of stacking spaces, and to allow for that amount of stacking without creating a lot of negative car interactions with trying to park and trying to get to the car wash, we would propose creating a drive aisle along the back that is dedicated solely to getting to the car wash. So we're here on our pre-application to get the commission's general feelings on it prior to creating a full development.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sure.
I'm not sure where this car wash is going to be and where you're going to come in and out of the car wash. Could you go through that a little slower?
Sure. So the existing at the end of the gas station, existing now is an oil change, which was proposed to remain. That is going to be converted into a car wash. That's we would like to propose that be a car wash. I'm sorry?
Is it wide enough for that?
It is.
Yes, yeah, it's a
Yes.
drive-through oil change.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's an automated one that they essentially fit them right in. They would build all the pieces in. So then, to accommodate this, we'd like to close one of the drive aisles in front of the gas station and create a new larger, or not larger, but a new driveway in front of the existing restaurant that will be in and out for both the gas station and for the new development, and create a drive aisle that comes down around the back of the facilities where cars can all wait to then enter the car wash and
You own
leave.
that property to the south you're talking about, is that right?
So some of this area is leased from Connecticut Light and Power, and we would need additional lease from them, which we believe we can secure, yes.
Again, just to clarify for me, so you're going in the car wash from the back?
Yes, and coming out
Which is
the
right
front.
across from the bank, basically, right?
There's a bank here, yes.
Right, and then where does it come out, on Silas Deane?
So there's a driveway, there's an existing driveway here.
So you're gonna come.
And here and down here, so they could loop around any which way and go at any of the entrances or exits.
But the most convenient travel is gonna be right to Silas Deane where the light is.
If you were going right, yes. Which they could do now out of the oil change as well, yes.
Rich?
Joe?
Couple of questions. I couldn't read the plans easily either, but what's the zoning designation of this property?
This is a town center.
Town center. So months ago, if not more than a year ago, we had someone else in an informal requesting our input on rezoning over where Pelton's used to be to do a car wash, and our feedback was that we didn't think changing the town center zone was appropriate to do that. But put aside the car wash for a minute, in terms of the residential, the apartment use, is that allowed under the current zoning without a change?
A mixed residential is, yes.
Mixed residential, so.
Yes.
And would you either be owning or leasing both the diner and the?
They do own both parcels. We would have a commercial use in the main floor of
Like what
the
type,
apartment building.
what might that be?
It might be a law office or those type of an office or a gym or something like that.
I mean, I'll
Type
just
of,
point
small-
out that Main Street is the street, it's really the end of Main Street on the north, intersecting the Silas Deane Highway, where a couple of the curb cuts are presently.
Wells Road, you're
Yeah,
saying?
Wells Road, sorry. It becomes Main Street a little farther down. But that light often backs up. You've got people, at the curb cut in and out of Ocean State. It's a fairly busy intersection, and I guess my overall take is I'm intrigued by the idea of doing some mixed use with apartments or residential of some kind. I think that could be an interesting use, but I have some substantial reservations about the car wash part of it and about changing the zone to allow a car wash, whether it's zone-wide in the town center, which was supposed to be sort of a distinct area going back years when we planned it, as well as the fact that that's a high-volume, high-traffic intersection. So if you were here without the car wash, I would be very interested in what you might be able to do with it.
Okay.
This is a pre-application.
Yes, we're just here informally to get some feedback.
To give us the big picture. How many units, how many bedrooms, how many car spaces available, any green space, any place to put the snow? You're intensifying the site fivefold. So tell us what your big global plan is to.
So we're looking at 19 residential, or 19 units, 18 of which would be residential and one which would be commercial. We have,
Are you taking it down, not to interrupt, is a diner coming down?
yes.
Okay, I wasn't clear on that, so. diner's
Yes,
coming
no, so
down.
the diner building that is here is being raised, and then a new residential building is being created with new parking along, between the two buildings. We have green space along Silas, Deane, and our neighbor to the south. We have 36 spaces on this parcel, on the diner parcel, if you will, and 24 spaces on the gas station. I understand your view on the car wash. We view the car wash as a less intensive, or a less objectionable use than the drive-through oil change. They're both essentially, or they're a similar thing, but the car wash has less undesirable environmental impacts. And so we would ask that you consider that. Yeah.
The oil change, but I've never taken my car through a car wash.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I mean, I think the turnover rate at a car wash has got to be substantially higher than at the, I've never seen a real backup at the oil change, but the car wash that's not that far to the south, you know, in winter season when people are trying to wash their cars on a Saturday, backs up out into the road.
Well, I mean, and we had the discussion last time that the car wash to the south basically tore down half of the car wash and put in an oil change.
Right.
So it makes me wonder how much more demand there is for car wash.
And this is a town center, which is a sensitive area. We had a large debate about this and another pre-application. So, I mean, the same concerns would apply here as it did in the other one.
No, the other one was a huge one though, right?
Not
That was
that-
like the whole, to me, an oil change is way worse than a car wash, one lane. I mean, what we were talking about taking pellets down, right, and putting in a hole.
No, wait, they had 2 lanes there.
Well, there was going to
I
be,
thought they were good, that whole, that's a whole.
They had
Well, it was
2
gonna be
lanes.
multiple
They're gonna have 1
uses.
lane there, yeah. It's gonna be multiple-use building.
This is a multiple-use facility, but you're still looking at a developer in front of us. I'm estimating from $1.4 to $2 million of investment, tearing down a diner that's been a beacon for Weathersfield forever, and putting up something, is it going to be a contemporary building? Do you have an idea what the rents would be in each one of these units? And I'm really interested in the green space. Right now, if I remember right, all I see is pavement and CL&P power lines, and behind that, around it, before it. You're looking for something with quality, I would think.
Yes.
Tell us a little more of the construction materials. And what are you doing? 16 units, you said? 19.
19 units,
Pretty intense site.
18 residential.
Why should we consider an intensity like that? Because you're good people, right? Okay, continue.
There's enough parking for 19 units there?
There is, yeah, we have 36 spaces, yes.
So, but that would mean there'd be no green space, right?
We have the entire front setback along Silas Deane, other than our driveway entrance, would be green space, and then along the southerly setback would also be entirely
Put some
green
flowers in
space.
the car wash and get rid of the car wash. Fill another part.
How many stories would the building be?
4 stories.
Why not 5? Is there a height requirement?
The maximum height is 40 feet, so that only lends to 4 stories.
Good.
But if we can do 5, we'll do 5.
The ratio for the resident apartments is 1 to 5.
I'm sorry.
The parking for the apartments on your drawing is 1.5.
Yes.
For 2, okay.
Yep.
Most people who own 2 of them, they use 2 cars. But question I have is, what is the traffic pattern? Because, okay, you got people coming out of the car wash forward. They're going to pull over, wipe their car down. Like if you watch someone down the street, people literally pull forward, park their car, spend about 5-10 minutes buffing it and doing things. And I'm just trying to figure out, if I'm buying gas, I come in by the apartment building, I go buy my gas.
do I do U to get out, or do I go around the building and miss the car wash people? And I'm just trying to figure out the pattern. If I'm coming off the Celestine Highway to buy gas and get out and get back on the Celestine Highway, I would have to go to Wells Road to get back on the Celestine Highway, correct?
You wouldn't have to, it depends whether you're going north or south. I would think the quicker way for traffic pattern, if you were going to continue south on Silas Deane, would be to go out to Wells Road and go to the light and wait for the light to turn so you can turn to go south. Otherwise, I would go to the driveway entrance here.
And it's like, if you're in the morning, people come out onto to that road, which is the road we were talking about for the last one, and there's almost collisions almost every time someone comes out that side.
Can I have one?
Yeah, you go down Spring Street if you want to go south on the Celestine.
I'm just trying to figure out the pattern.
Yeah, today was the changes for the gas station. We're making this one today, it's entrance and exit. We're making it exit only today with the gas station, regardless of all this project suggestions. This one is going to become exit only. It's not going to be exit and entrance, so it'll be exit only from here. The entrance, there's an entrance today over here, it's going to be entrance only. So it'll be entrance only, it's going to be exit only to reduce traffic. Today this is what's approved for the gas station, doing the change for that. Same goes on over here, it's going to be exit over here and exit over here for the gas station. Now, if somebody's pulling in from here, it's going to be blocked. It's going to be only exit. Somebody coming in, they can go inside the car wash or the building. And by the way, there is here 2 lanes inside the property to connect the front to the back of the parking lot. There's 2 lanes over here for traffic to go back or to go out from the back.
Yeah, it's very hard to understand where the curb cuts are.
I'm really sorry about what we submitted.
Yeah, so I commend you guys coming in with something creative. I think it's good. My concern is strictly intensity of use, and I'm totally against the car wash. I'm just going to lay it out on the table. And I think it's the town center issue with me, number one, and the intensity for the car wash. But I think the rest of the project, yeah, it's creative. You got something started there that would be considerable, or something for us to consider.
So, okay, just the question is, when we bought this property, we have the oil change. Either we can upgrade the oil change, or we switch it to the car wash.
Upgrade the oil change. I'll come and change my oil, okay? I live right down the street.
I think the challenge that you're facing is like, there's the intensity of the use of the property is one thing, but it's like, if you have that many residents there, and typically they're gonna wanna go south on south, they're gonna need direction, like all directions covered, right? Now, if they're using the back parking lot and they're gonna take a left to get up to 170, to follow 175, to the left on the way this plan is, it's tricky, because the queues back up. If you use if we're using the Borden as a sample of this, because it's a larger scale version sort of what we have. It's just an office building in the corner, but they have enough room behind there that there's the queue doesn't back up to the road that they're coming in, so that they can take that left. Honestly, if I'm taking this left, there's a significant amount of the day that queue backs up. I live I live a 1/10 of a mile from
I'm
here,
not sure what you're talking.
So if I'm coming out the back of the parking lot where you were just pointing.
Here?
Yep, and I want to go to Newington, so I want to take a left out of there. The queue for that
You're
left
talking about
turn.
this one, correct? Not
Both, actually, both are challenged, but he's talking about Wells Road.
Wells Road?
Yeah, so I'm going to go up and I'm going to take a left, right? So now, if I want to take a left, if I want to take a left, all right, now I only have to go to that 1 lane. If I want to go straight on 175, now I have to worry about the queue of those left-turning vehicles and be able to get into that straight. It's a tricky scenario for a lot of the day, or for a couple of hot peak times of day. But it's also a challenge just overall. And I think you're facing a much bigger challenge there than anything on the property. So you would have to prove that, and I think that many additional cars.
Prove that for what, the car wash? The
No, for
added
any
intensity of
development here, and you're gonna change like your traffic pattern here.
Okay.
Now, you're gonna have to prove to the board, to the neighbors, to, you know, anyone who wants to attempt to live there, if I wanna go 175 every morning, because I work in Newington,
Okay.
that's the challenge, like, that's gonna be tricky. I can't go out the southern curb cut of where the diner is, because the traffic queues up on 99 all the way further back. So I'm just highlighting that that's probably the biggest hurdle that you're
Okay.
facing here in terms of, it's not just opinion, it's, you gotta prove that the residents can safely go where they need to go.
But the general idea of the apartment building, just if we get like the first part, so we can go ahead and get more professional.
The concept of what it is, sure, maybe not the size. Like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of how many people are trying to
Okay.
go to work in the morning.
Well, we certainly will have a traffic engineer.
And you hit that demographic of people who like to live between gas stations.
I like the idea of more housing on the Silas Street, right? I mean, that's something that gets talked about in Weathersfield a lot. Frankly, from a sort of describing this to us and others, combining the apartment building with the car wash becomes a distraction to the discussion about the apartment. Like, I would focus on that. That's sort of the stake here, right? And that's the big thing in the middle of the plate. What would you, so you're looking at, if I did my math right, basically adding 38 bedrooms in here, 19 units times
Yes.
2 bedrooms, okay. What were you picturing as the market rate or the rental rate?
So, but first, we don't know when it's gonna get done, and
Okay.
basically, we're gonna do it the most affordable as we can, so make it just, we don't wanna make any money in the beginning, at least we can break up our costs. So based when the project is gonna be done and what's the market that's gonna be at that time, so we try to make it as low as possible.
So,
Yeah,
low.
we haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay, so you haven't gotten that far into it yet?
Not entirely, yes.
Because that's gonna be a question that
Certainly.
we and a lot of others will have, is what do you
Certainly.
do as your rate structure?
I would expect it to be. Okay.
I just want to just kind of emphasize the traffic issue there, because, I mean, I live right down the street. I come up Main Street and cross that intersection a few times a day. Cars back up usually, just about any time I go, almost nearly to the tracks.
Okay.
And that's going to be your biggest issue when you come here. I mean, you're going to have to do a traffic study, you're going to have to do a flow study, you're going to have to convince us that as busy as that place is, and it's busy, you're not going to make the situation much worse. That's where I'll be interested in knowing.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I think just to pile on Peter's point, you know, now that we have the stop signs on the track, it just adds an additional degree of uncertainty as far as, you know, am I going to be able to get into the Ocean State job lot parking lot? You know, are these people going to stop long enough that I can go there, or are the Spring Street people going to kind of blow through the the train track stop sign? I mean, there's a whole lot going on right there.
Okay.
George?
I want to ask the manager, how many trains go through there a day, and don't they go through at night? Do we need stop signs?
Yes.
And you're the stop sign guy in town.
Well, not for trains, I'm not.
Not for trains.
I have no jurisdiction over the
No,
trains.
but stop signs, though, are regular stop signs, so.
They're regular stop signs, but they're required because of the train track. It has nothing to do with the LTA.
Yeah, but don't trains go through there at night?
They go through at night, they go through at the daytime. I just heard
They
one.
do.
Yeah.
They go through the daytime there too.
They do?
Yeah.
Oh,
Occasionally, yeah.
I've never seen.
They're going at
too
5
far.
miles an hour, and it's not like it's going to be, but yeah, they go through.
I've never heard of it at night.
I've never seen them.
Yeah. you-
At all.
Not in 25
From
years.
the standpoint, has a marketing study been done for the apartments?
And
Because a two-bedroom apartment,
At all times.
if you
day and
use
night.
the board as examples of the building, you're talking 3,000 plus a month. And you can't, if you try to bring down the number, one-bedroom apartments in there, you don't have the square footage for the parking. I'm just wondering if someone's actually thought out, two-bedroom apartments, $3,500 a month. Can Weathersfield support that type of rental?
We haven't fully vetted all of that yet, no. And we certainly will have that in our presentation.
Why don't you put a
When we come-
Starbucks drive-through through there?
You know, I was gonna ask about a drive-through where the oil is, but I reserved myself on that. Yeah, I think, you know, your big challenge is, I'm relatively new to this, the traffic that makes the gas station successful is sort of like your enemy on the apartment in some ways, so you gotta kind of figure that one out.
Yeah, I mean, and you have the new complication there also of having changed it from a gas-oriented repair business to, you know, a convenience store maybe someday. You know, with the parking in the back as opposed to the parking in the front, and now you're inviting conflicts on the egress.
Trying to get the best use out of the place. Even the convenience stores, which are like a fresh market now when it's finished construction, you walk into a lot of organic stuff. It's just like a little shopping things. Not similar to a lot of convenience stores and the other gas stations.
Yeah, I think it's great actually.
We have others that can,
Get you outside
it's
of
like
it.
a fresh market kind of thing. So the new version of gas stations.
Get my
not like
chives.
Do you think the commission's being helpful? Do you need more information from us?
I don't. I think we got what we need so that we understand sort of what's going to be important to you when we come back with a full proposal.
As far as the apartment, about what the car wash is, still, if we prove it,
We can try, but I think we got our answer on that.
Car wash doesn't garner a lot of support.
Yeah, there's not a lot of enthusiasm for car washes in the town center zone.
I'd also put a lot of thought into what it looks like from the road, from what your landscaping is going to be, how you're going to shield the parking, and the aesthetics. That will be
Okay.
big
Yeah.
for the area that you're doing this.
Yes, this is a highly visible corner. We know that, so.
Just curious, is the diner still open? I haven't been there.
Yeah,
It is, yeah, we were just there Monday.
It's just not on weekends when people want to go to diners.
Exactly.
Right?
Especially with Dunning's closed.
We went Monday, foods are good.
I assume you've met setback sidelines, the ratio of parking to the units.
We will,
You've already
yes.
done due diligence to some degree.
Yes.
I think it's creative, innovative. Maybe I dreamt it, but I remember of the 20-plus sessions we had for the master plan last time, there were things as creative as rotaries at these intersections to slow traffic down and move traffic more efficiently, somewhat like Glastonbury's done and a lot of area towns have done. So
Yeah.
this is an initial submission to us, I think, that is thinking outside the box. It's creative, it's innovative. Every car needs an oil change, but other than that,
You're
I
not
think the
suggesting a
concept-
rotary.
I don't know if 19 units is too much, maybe 12, 14, but depends on what your architectural renderings look like. And
because the construction cost is too high, we said that the highest apartment as we can break up with the cost.
you
That's the
can
only
do,
thing.
you guys will make it work, and we'll give you as much constructive criticism as we can.
All right.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next, 4.2, pre-application review, Allstate CDL 885 Wells Road.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. I know you stuck me on the agenda, kind of short notice, so I appreciate it. My name's Chris Majorano, and I am the director of Allstate Commercial Driver Training School. I've been running the school for about 20 years, and we are a CDL training school. We were looking at the parcel, it's about 4 acres, at 885 Wells Road. It would be behind the building that you can see from the street. It's sort of a rectangular parcel right behind that, to move our CDL training school. It would basically consist of a building. It would basically consist of, we would need a building. Right now, we have about 10,000 square feet building for offices and student area, and then like a large pave area where we do the training. It's probably 80% on-site. We do go out on the road, like so probably about 20% of the hours. We're licensed by the state of Connecticut as an educational institution, and the DMV inspectors do come down to our site to conduct the tests. So we, in addition to your approval, we need the state approval as well to do that. It's in the business park zone. We are an educational institution, and we kind of resemble like a truck or freight operation. But we are, in my estimation, pretty like low impact. I've heard the word like intensity. We're pretty like low intensity. We need a lot of space. It's not, right now we have about half a dozen trucks in our Meriden location, which is what we would be relocating to this site with the building. Our trucks are never loaded. We don't do any like on-site fuel storage or anything like that. And we don't do any on-site maintenance of the trucks either. We use an outside mechanic for all of that stuff. So none of that would be done on-site. Yes.
Just to clear this up, what size trucks are we talking about?
Well, there are tractor trailers, not full size. They're like we're using like day cab tractors with 40-foot trailers. So the state of Connecticut doesn't allow schools to use like full 53-foot trailers that you probably most commonly see. But they still have a big truck feel, you know, 40-foot trailers with day cab tractors.
And they would be stored in this property?
Well, they would be parked there overnight, and, you know, during the day, we run a training course, which is basically, you know, for one truck, it's you need a lot of space. It's cones set up in various formations. So we would first teach you how to just go like straight up and straight back. We're kind of always at an idle speed. We're never revving, we're never carrying freight or, you know, what you think of like with big trucks. It's kind of at a idle speed, going forward, going back, and then maybe like moving the cones, so now they're doing like a parallel park, and just kind of teaching students how to back the trucks, inspect the trucks. They're not even running all the time. When we're doing like an inspection of the vehicle, the truck might be off, and the student and the instructor are kind of walking around, checking tires, checking under, checking lights, you know, checking everything. If you were to look at it, you might not even know that we were open. So it is, I think, pretty like low intensity, kind of, you know, low impact, low traffic. But that's what we do.
How many students, what are your hours of operation, and how big a building would you build?
We haven't quite figured out, you know, we're still in the kind of the entry talks of this. So as far as the size of the building, we currently have 10,000 square feet in Seymour, which is office space, student space, and we have some like garage space just for parking of the vehicles, not working on them. How many students we have, we're kind of unique that we do private lessons. We're the only school in Connecticut that does one-on-one training. So rather than having like a cohort of students all like coming and there all day, our students come one at a time. So like right now in Meriden, it could be anywhere from like 2 to 3 students every hour and a half. Okay, so I would come from 7:30 to 9 for my class. I have my own truck and I have my own instructor, and that's my session, and then I go home. And then the next student would come in for their hour and a half, 9 to 10:30, and then they would go home. So it's kind of one at a time, paced usually like an hour and a half at a time, you know, per student. But it's one-on-one, and that's kind of our niche. We're really the only school that does it like that, but we don't have like huge cohorts of classes coming in at one time.
So one truck is operating at any point in time?
Well, with one student, so like we have like right now maybe like 2 to 3 trucks would be operating depending on how many instructors I have on any given day. You know, so like maybe 2 to 3 trucks at a time.
How close would the truck get to the residential houses next to you?
They don't have to get close. That's one of the nice things about this location is that the concentration of the traffic.
Well, just give me a distance. Is it 100 feet? Is it 50 feet? Is it 600 feet?
There's enough room on this parcel. It's probably not 600 feet, but there's enough room on this parcel for us that we could definitely buffer from the few residences that are on like the back side of the property.
Like you'd put up a fence?
We could put up a fence and leave some of it wooded. It's currently wooded, you know, so between a wooded buffer and a fence, I'm sure that we could be not bothersome to them, because again, like the traffic ideally would go, the address is 885 Wells, but ideally, like if we could get access from Progress, oops, sorry, that would work well. So students and trucks, would just enter from that direction, which is on the opposite side of where the residences are. So they'd be parking close to the road there. That's where the building would be, close to Progress, in my vision, and then the training fields in back. But we could definitely buffer.
Is your training field the standard CDL layout, using just the flags or the cones?
Yeah.
You're doing like an alley dock?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yep.
Peter,
exactly.
you want to vision this thing? Like when we were training with the fire department, we'd lay this course out in the back corner of like Incarnation's parking lot.
Okay.
It fit back there with one apparatus going. Or we moved, I forgot where they moved it now, but that's about the scale that it took to train on the trucks, and you needed some room to come turn it around. I need more room than other guys, but my course was much bigger.
How long ago was that?
A while.
Okay, because like pre-2015, it was actually a smaller amount of space required for this course, which is maybe what you're talking about. Now it's like one truck even needs even more space, so it is
Yeah, but I've seen them training. That was a while.
very
ago.
similar to
Even
what you're
now when
saying.
train,
They had
it's
flags
bigger,
back
but
then,
it's still
right?
not- They don't need the whole church parking lot, for
Can I-
example.
Not to be negative, but there's got to be a million places to do that better than, that's really a residential wooded area. So Saturday afternoons, people are going to hear trucks going up. Again, I love your business, but you're going to take all the trees down. People live there, cross street, it's all residential, then they're going to hear trucks all day long, 3 trucks. Even, I know there's quiet, but I just can't think of the worst spot than that spot for
Really?
a truck.
Are you gonna-
I know you're negative, but you got the whole Berlin Turnpike, you could pick 100
Well, that's what I
spots.
mean, like everybody there is within earshot of the Berlin Turnpike,
No, I
which has
understand,
got,
but you
the
just
trucks
moved
and the
it.
traffic and the.
I'm just, for me, I look at this thing, you're gonna take all the trees down behind Con Company, and there's all houses across the street, and maybe you could put a buffer, some trees, but it's gonna be
I
all day
really do
trucks.
believe, yeah.
I'm just not seeing it.
I get a lot of love from the neighbors.
There's a few residences that border what's like the small side of the rectangle on the far end of the activity. And
Shouldn't you be
again,
down
with the
like
size
Brainerd, shouldn't you be down like Brainerd Road where the big parking lots down, that type of area? I'm just. It's a residential, it's truly residential area. It really is.
I just, again, those residences, there's a few, and they are on like the far side, away from our driveway, away from Progress, in a way that like our trucks would be going out, again, at idle speed. We are a training school, coming out the driveway and then right to the Berlin Turnpike,
There's a place
where
on
we can
Middletown
easily.
Avenue, what if you grab that place on Middletown Avenue?
We totally stay out of residential areas completely. That's, there's no benefit.
But that's a good point, though, but then you're gonna take your truck out with your student for a road test, right? Well, out to the Pike or.
The Berlin Turnpike's right there, yeah, so for us just kind of like go south and kind of like head down, which is kind of the roads we're used to now, coming from Meriden, and then do a turnaround, come back up the Berlin Turnpike, and then right off the ramp, the driveway's right there,
What
Progress
time
is
do you
right there.
operate
I'm sorry?
What time do you operate at?
We currently, it's a daytime hours between 7:30 and 4, sometimes maybe to 5:30.
That area is a traffic disaster up there, early in the morning. Have you been up there early AM, like 7:30 to 9? Very backed up with Newington traffic coming out. In fact, when you go, you'll see a sign when you pull in. Have you driven on Progress Drive? You'll see a sign that says, I think, like, no turn, $250 or something. That's there because there's a ridiculous number of people who use that as a turnaround.
But we might only have one truck going out from 7:30 to 9. That's my point of intensity. We might have one vehicle that needs to get into that from 7:30 to 9 and come back, and then 9 to 10:30 we have another shift, and probably during the most. It's like the traffic wise, it really is very minimal. We're in Seymour now, and we're in Meriden, and not only no complaints, no accidents, and we have a good reputation as a school, and we've been around since 1975. But I don't think anybody even knows we're there. Like, honestly, that's how much we bother. It's
How
like,
close to residences, right, like, similar setup down there?
actually, yes, in Seymour, we're close to residences, and I've been through this, because, more so than this property, a lot more so, because in Seymour, we're in an industrial zone that over the years had allowed single-family residences to build in the industrial zone. So by the time we came along, there was opposition to that, but these houses were built in industrial, so anyway, we ended up getting in, and we are there. And again, no one's complained since. Of course, there was a lot of opposition, and I've been through some of that, you know what I mean? Of course, there was a lot of opposition beforehand, but now that we're there, we've been there 10 years, like, we're good neighbors, and there's no complaints. There's really nothing to complain about. We are pretty quiet and pretty low-key, and
Do these trucks have a backup beeper on them?
No, they don't, actually, which is great, because it would drive my instructors crazy.
And your neighbors, yes.
Yes, so no, we don't have any of that. No, I mean, again, it's pretty quiet. You think of trucks, but it is, again, at an idle speed, at the distance. We really, and we did the noise studies, and we did the traffic study. I've been through that stuff. Again, intensity-wise, we're very low intensity. I can say that. This location, it's hidden from view, kind of tucked away back on a otherwise quiet road from what I can see. And I do believe, yeah, there are a few residences there on the far end that we would never be passing their house. We would never be driving next to anything. It's basically a border that I do think that we could effectively buffer to the point where we're not bothering anybody.
Are you going to be constructing a new building?
Yeah, there's nothing there now. It's, we would have to, yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. Any weekend operations?
We currently run 7 days a week.
And what hours, from when to when?
So like the weekend is generally like 7:30 to, let's say, 3, but, like right now, like in Meriden, like 2 instructors, they leave at noon, and then I have one that goes till 3, so it's just.
And how about weekdays?
Weekdays is similar, like 7:30 to 5:30 maybe.
So when you're in like winter hours and it gets dark early, do you light up the parking lot to be able to do what you're doing?
A little bit. Again, it's that like the 4 to 5:30 class would be like our last one during the week, and it holds up pretty well for most of the winter, but it does get dark for that month or two, and a lot of students don't want to train like that. I'd like to have lights back there to.
And I guess another question is this a permitted use in the business park zone? And if it is it just a site plan application, or is it a special permit also? Okay.
It's special permit, so educational institutions are permitted by special permit in the business park zone. So are trucking and freight operations permitted by special permit in the business park zone. So we're kind of like a mix of both. Like I said, kind of a low intensity, I would argue, mix of both. And very low traffic, and I don't think, we're not going to increase the traffic anywhere or really burden it.
I assume you're taking all the trees down there, pretty much.
Well, no, I mean, I like trees personally, and we have that in Seymour. It's kind of what's nice about our property, and I like having our field, and I like the trees, and I like looking at them, and so no, I mean, we would take down what is needed, to clear out. But do we need to level 4 acres? No, absolutely not.
Between Progress Drive and you?
I'm sorry?
Will there be trees between Progress Drive and your driveway? Will it be right up there, right to it?
Well, I would envision, that we would, I mean, maybe there would be some trees, maybe there would be a driveway. I would think that a driveway off of Progress would make a lot of sense, whether we keep some trees there, you know what I mean? Maybe we don't have to clear out the whole opening, because there's a lot of frontage on Progress. So it could just be a driveway and keep some tree frontage so that you can't even.
Have you talked to the Progress Drive owner at all, or not that far yet?
We've talked to the owner of it's 885 Wells. So
I'm talking about the Progress Drive, the whole street behind it.
On the other side of the street? Yeah. No, who owns that? I saw that.
I know, he's kind of a high-end guy. I'm just curious if you talked to him.
I haven't. To be honest, we started looking at 2090 Berlin Turnpike. okay, right across from the Bowl-O-Rama, there's that 3 acres there.
There you go.
Okay,
Perfect spot.
or it's not 3 acres, it's like 7. Wait, yeah, okay. We were looking at that, and we were talking to them about that, and then I was speaking to Denise, who I think, rightly told me that, our use more aligns with the BP zone than the RC zone, and then we would have to go for like a text change for the RZ zone, for that. Anyway, we were talking about 2090, and in our talks about 2090 Berlin Turnpike, I found across the street here practically 885 Wells in the BP zone, and we're looking at their back lot. So there's a building right now for sale, and I heard it brought up several times in this meeting. I was surprised. There's a building on their property that's probably about 4 acres, and this is like another 4 acres behind it. So that whole parcel, 885, is like 10 acres.
So does this parcel directly abut Progress Drive? I can't tell from the map that we
Yeah, it
looked like it abuts property of New England
it's like
Auto.
a big rectangle that goes from Progress Drive, Wells, and then all the way to the other road where the residences are. So it's like a big it's like a big rectangle, and where the building is that you can see from the street, that's like about 4 acres, and we're looking at like the 4 wooded acres right behind it.
Do you know roughly how many square feet of parking lot pavement you would need to do what you do? Is it, a half acre? Is it an acre?
I mean, to do what we do, I need at least 2 acres.
Of pavement?
But more would be better, but like at least 2 acres of the 4, and then some parking lot and some building space in the front, so like out of the 4, like we could probably, use 3, okay? And then use an acre to buffer from the residences and maybe keep some tree lines on the perimeter, which I would like as well. Yes, sir.
Could you just go over again why you abandoned the Berlin Turnpike property?
Oh, you think that's better?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were being.
No, I think that would be a better.
Really?
Yeah, why did you discount that property?
Well, it's a lot more expensive, number one, and there's a huge drop-off. I mean, there's maybe 3 acres on the top, but it's hard for me to really visualize because it's very overgrown. So I do have some maps on that. So there's maybe 3 acres where we could carve out some training fields.
You can practice hills.
I'm sorry?
You can practice hills.
Right, exactly. And then there's a pretty severe drop-off. Now, the owners of that property are trying to represent that back acreage back there where all the wetlands are is somehow usable, but I don't think it is for our purposes. And then next to that is the other like 15-acre parcel that I think is behind on taxes.
Yeah, Paul's place.
You know what I'm talking about? I don't know the address. You know what I mean? It abuts this one,
Yeah, Paul's.
which is also in the RC zone. So I thought, why would you think that one's better on the Berlin Turnpike?
Because there's no trees, there's no anything there. It's been sitting there for years. That's the only reason I want to say. It's been empty for as long as I've lived here.
Well, so is the one we're looking at.
There's no trees, there's no trees.
You're going to take 60-70% of the trees out in an area that could be used for something
Residential.
a lot less invasive as that, and it's environmentally impactful. You can go to the Berlin Turnpike, and it's been like that for years, and we'd love to have.
Well, it's
you
an
use that.
industrial zone. I mean, right? I mean, so someone's going to come and like by right put a building there and take out the trees. Like, I mean, the trees are ultimately going to have to go if you're going to develop that in.
Yeah, but they may not put 2-3 acres of paving down. They make it a nice, beautiful building.
Would attract kind of the wrong attention from the neighborhood.
Discouraging industrial.
Yeah, I
Just
would.
go to the Berlin Turnpike. I'm not.
You
I'm
really?
not saying
Like
it's great. We'd love to have you in town, but
Does everybody agree on that? Does everybody like that?
No, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
More so than this?
I don't know about the
God, I
other
thought this would
towns.
be the easier road just because it's in the right zone seemingly for our purpose. Otherwise, we'd have to go for like a text change because the RC zone that the Berlin Turnpike allows, you know what I mean? Like the BP zone allows some trucking, it allows some educational institutions. The RC zone currently does not.
You want the Berlin Turnpike?
I don't know, I haven't looked. I mean, this is the first
Just-
I'm hearing of it, so.
Just another option. I don't think you should discount. That's what
We thought this would maybe be just easier just because of the zoning. Otherwise, we'd be looking at a text change as well. and-
It's the impact on the property and the residences that you wouldn't have on the Berlin Turnpike. That's the bottom line.
There's a few residences on like the far end of that property, like what would we have to do to, I mean, I would argue like our use is, God, if somebody put up like a big like building, on 4 acres and utilize that property, you could be talking about a lot more traffic
It
and
would be
cars.
driving trucks all day around too, making noise. I don't know.
Yeah, you got diesel fumes, you got noise, you got 7 days operation. Residents are going to be impacted. Come on, you know that.
I think, but there's a school up there. I don't know how that plays.
The school for the deaf, is that the one you're talking
No,
about?
not the school for, it's,
Yeah, it is up there. It's up in the end of Progress Drive.
Okay, I see it over here. So you got a
Which
school
one?
there and they just completed.
Which school, sorry?
It's called CREC.
It's a
program of the Capital
smell the
Region
fumes.
Education Council.
That's right.
Regional Educational Service Center. And it's a...
Capital
it's a-
Workforce Partners?
Excuse me?
Is it
No,
Capital?
it's-
Oh,
yes,
okay, I'm sorry.
It's elementary, I think.
Oh, it's,
Well,
where are they?
It's actually designed as an integrated school for children with hearing impairments and normal children together.
Right.
Kindergarten and pre-K. Plus, it's a center for diagnostic work for students region-wide and for repairing of, equipment that's used for people with hearing.
There's still another like 4-acre parcel that would be between this parcel and that school, by the way. Like, I don't know who owns that, but there's a whole nother parcel there too that.
Yeah, I don't remember, I don't know what the use, the use patterns in terms of traffic that the school generates, but there you can anticipate like some, parents coming there, dropping kids off, picking them up, small van-like bus vehicles that transport
About 40
kids.
years ago.
But it's not that it's not as intensive as you would find in like a normal elementary school. It's rather specialized.
I did. I drove up there and I didn't see anybody. I thought we
I would just check the owner of Progress Drive. That would be good to do. They just completed another building.
Which one?
Young Medical. I think it is Young Health, Young Medical.
Young
Yeah,
pharmaceuticals.
I think you're,
Young American.
from the way you're talking, your biggest sales job, if you will, for your project is probably not necessarily this commission, but it's going to be the people up there that are going to be affected, both the business, commercial occupants of that land as well as residential occupants. And if you could get them behind you for your proposed project, that would probably go a long way to alleviating concerns that the commission might bring up.
What business commercial talk?
Yeah, I think like in general though, like
There's nothing
the,
there.
everything that's being brought up here in a, like just saying them is going to be brought up during your presentation, and it's going to be brought up by the residents, and they're going to talk and they're going to come and they're going to be here as you might have noticed before. And just saying, like, you're gonna have to appease them, the residents. You're going to have to appease the people talking about fumes, this and that. So there's a decent amount of just sort of backup information that you would need for that. And I think just in general, we're able to just say them because we hear them a lot from people who are going to be attending the meeting. But just in general, like if there's a question about the school, if you had if you had like a relationship with them and you talked about it, like, that's going to go a long way in terms of just sort of selling it to the people who are going to be the most affected by this, who are going to be, that neighborhood right there.
And you have kind of a good background for making your sales pitch to the residents, the occupants of that area, because of your other, schools in the state. And particularly if you can bring some residents, some neighbors of your current, business utilization into, say, some, meetings, some open meetings or housewarming kind of meetings within the neighborhood, you'd be able to, show, the precedent of what you've done and how it's a rather benign use, as you say, and so forth. So you have some good talking points, but you do have you've got a tough sales job, if you will.
Always, yeah. About the RC zone, I'm sorry, I know I'm the last guy standing here. That would still involve a text amendment, right? To look at an RC zone on the Berlin Turnpike or the other one.
Necessarily seems so. You'd need a special use permit and possibly, if, your educational credentials hold true, it would seem to me that would qualify you to apply for a special use permit for that zone. And you would also probably have to provide a site plan with a good survey of the property. And that would be in the application to us.
Right, yeah, I didn't get that far with the details. I kind of just wanted to take the temperature and, kind of see what the feeling was. I was a little surprised with the feedback because I thought the BP zone would be more appealing, but what about that tax default property?
Which one are you talking about?
Yeah. The one next to, the one across the street from 885 Wells. It's 15 acres and it connects to 2090 on the Berlin Turnpike.
Oh, is that the long, narrow one?
It's 15 acres. It's part wetlands, and then there's some non-wetlands in there.
Paulding's place.
Yeah, you can't build anything on any of that.
Isn't that a wetland in there?
It's the whole thing underneath the power lines and the swamp there.
Yeah.
When you look at the map on the town site, and you can pull up the wetlands, it's not all wet back there. There is some strips. I haven't investigated it fully.
Well, I mean, we may be talking about different property too.
Maybe,
I mean, across the road is...
It's literally across the street from 885 Wells, like where the building is, like right across the street. 2090 is the clearing across from the Bolorama there, and then you would get off the exit ramp. Like you're going to Wells.
It's like the
and
clear
it's
space
on the
at
right.
the top, and then it goes down the hill.
It's 15 acres on the right of that like exit ramp onto Wells, that property.
I'm sure there's 3 or 4 usable acres in there.
That's what I think you're right. I think there is a few acres at least in there.
Yeah, no,
So you like that one better, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Than across the street?
The guy that owned there used to be on this commission.
Below the drop off?
I'm sorry?
You could squeeze in there below where it drops off to the wetland on the south side you're talking about?
I don't know.
Well, I think the problem with other developments on that site was that you only had one way in and one way out.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was why you couldn't necessarily put a residential development there.
Right, which I understand people were trying to do and trying to connect those
But
so you had another exit on
maybe
the
a
other side,
driveway, you say, could go in? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can always do a driveway.
Need to get back in there, yeah, I guess.
I feel like an online consultant here, giving them all the real estate advice we could give you.
Yeah.
Well,
other questions?
you got enough information from us?
I think so.
Okay.
So you guys are a little more favorable to that in general? Fuck yeah. Really?
We're in favor of you doing what you can do.
Just consider those options, that's all.
Yeah, and I appreciate it.
You might want to approach the other residential properties before you even go any further to see if it's going to encroach on their privacy, if you're committed to this site.
Well, I know if I ask any residents, what they'd like to see there, they're gonna say nothing. We'd prefer to see just the woods that it's been, you know what I mean? But ultimately,
1,000
this
feet
is-
away, and you're gonna put in 20-foot arborvitae,
Yeah, how's he gonna appease them?
Yeah. Well, that's
Don't know what else to offer.
not up to
Yeah.
us.
All right.
He's
Well,
just
I
gotta put up with
appreciate-
them when they come in here at the hearing, that's
You
all.
saw a little bit of it tonight.
Any more questions for me?
I don't.
Everyone's good? Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Good luck.
Appreciate you. Yeah, no, thanks for the
Thank you
feedback, yeah.
for coming in.
One last question. Do you have other towns you're considering?
It's
All right.
I mean, we're considering anything in the general area.
No, we want you in this town.
We like this area, yeah.
Yeah. How committed are you to Weathersfield is my question, really.
I would really like to find something that would work here, and
So-
we're
so-
neighbors, and I know that.
So we got a great planning department. You got some feedback from us. Let's see if we can work something out.
I worked with Denise, and it was her opinion that the BP zone would be more fitting.
That's kind of that's a technicality opinion. Okay.
And this is not a negative commission.
I think you're gonna have trouble with neighbors.
Okay.
Talk to her again.
Yeah.
Talk to Denise again.
She okay? She back? Because that was the reason I
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Well, it doesn't have to be a text amendment in this case. He may have a special permit application.
Good luck.
All right, thank you.
All right.
All right, next item is the August 1st, 2023 minutes.
I wasn't here.
First page.
Yeah, I think,
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Well, is the first,
Just
have you seen that first page?
I think they're out of, they're separated.
you
I
don't
think.
have the first page?
That's cool. I assume you have the first page.
Yeah, I have page 1. I don't know why mine's different.
Yeah, the first page is right before the Allstate CDL application in my packet, and then the other pages pick up later.
Oh, all right.
there it is.
Yeah, I'm looking at the one I brought,
When's the
not the
first
one that
one?
was here.
Just check.
We're all very quiet at a virtual meeting.
Oh, right, that was that one.
Yep.
Right.
Tom, did you make a motion to approve?
Yeah, I made motion.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
All right, motion's made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 I'm abstaining.
Opposed, abstentions.
Abstaining also.
I'm abstaining.
3 abstentions.
All right, everybody who wasn't here is abstaining. We got some correspondence, upcoming land use commissioner training opportunities. It looks like most of these are virtual and free.
Training 1 and training 2.
Wait a minute,
Yeah.
I don't, with 48 years on this commission, need to get any training, do I?
Yes.
I do?
We all agree that you
Still
do.
gotta go through it.
Joe and I are the only people that don't.
State of Connecticut. I always knew they were nuts when I worked for them, but I begin to wonder, they require this?
Yeah.
Serve on land use commissions after.
Not just new people.
No.
It's learning, George, it's a big future.
Oh, God. Things have changed that much that we gotta get new training? Okay.
Yeah, you get 4 hours, one of which is on fair and affordable housing.
Are we talking this?
Since I worked in the housing department for 20 years. What?
Yeah, but
Never mind.
They've
I don't wanna
moved
argue.
beyond the caves.
Ridiculous. I could teach the course, probably.
George, you already.
Except I'm not up to speed, I'm not modern.
All right. We all have to get the training, that's it.
Yeah, you all need the
No.
training.
Sorry.
Anything else? We have 2 applications. Are either of them going to be on our next agenda, do you think?
I believe so. I think they both are. The first one is an existing residence on Main Street that has been cited for selling out of, having a retail use there, so they're coming in for the official ability to do that, because they've kind of been doing it anyway.
Okay.
The next one is directly across the street from this building. The store, the spot next to it, which I believe was like
The old vape spot.
Vape shop. They want to do essentially like a smoothie kind of restaurant type use.
Like acai, something like that?
Smoothie? I'm not exactly sure.
All right. Anything else anybody has they want to talk about? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?